Hello, Bulls fans. This is Matt and John from UB Bull Run. It's Sunday night, which means it's time to talk Olympic sports. We're almost done with the fall season. There is only one match left from one fall sports team, and the winter season is pretty light when it comes to Olympic sports. We don't talk either of the basketball teams here, in addition to not talking football. So until January comes and we start up and get going, it's really just swimming and wrestling. But both competed this weekend. We've got a lot to say. John is here with me. If you missed last week, John's replaced Dave. John is our wrestling guy at Bull Run. He knows the stuff. He lets me pester him on Twitter all day when wrestling's happening. Uh, and so it's good to have him, especially because wrestling's my worst sport by a long shot. So we're here talking live. We'll get to wrestling and swimming and diving. We'll also touch on volleyball, which finished up their MAC season on Friday night, and we'll see where else we go. The first thing we'll start with is the weekend rundown, of course. Just to quickly say, if you missed anything, what happened this weekend for UB, it was, like I said, a light weekend. Both soccer teams are done. Tennis has been done for a while. Cross country and that world has been done for a while. And we're kind of light until things get back going in January. Swimming and diving was supposed to be at a three-day meet this weekend in Cleveland, but as you might imagine, given all the news in Western New York, they were unable to make it to Cleveland on Friday, so they missed the first day of the Magnus Invitational at Cleveland State University. I think Magnus is the name of their mascot. I'm not entirely sure, but it's the Magnus Invitational. They actually weren't able to leave in part because Coach Andy Basher wasn't able to get out of his house until Friday. He was snowed in the Southtown somewhere, so they missed on Friday. Also on Friday, volleyball started the MAC tournament. As we talked about last week, it was their first ever time they'd finished in the top 8 of the MAC. They advanced it wasn't a quarterfinal, it's a first-round game because the MAC bracket is funny, but played number 5 Western Michigan. They were swept by the Broncos in 3 sets, 3 progressively more uncompetitive, non-competitive sets, 25-22, 25-18, and 25-19. Not a great showing. Definitely lots of newcomers on the team. Looked like they were nervous. New high for the program. You can understand if they're nervous. And we'll talk more about this later, but Western Michigan went and upset Ohio tonight, so they might have lost to the eventual MAC champs. So you can't. That's something to be happy about, I think. I'm an optimist. Saturday, it was only swimming and diving. They got going, finally showed up, and on the day on Saturday, they had 3 meet records, 2 of which were NCAA B cuts, and 7 wins of 15 of 30 events, or no, 15 events, excuse me, of 15 or 16 events. So they showed up in a big way on Saturday. Sunday was swimming and diving, finishing up the Magnus Invitational. That's today. They set 2 more meet records. They didn't have set any more NCAA qualifying times, but they had 6 more wins and 15 or 16 more events. The women finished the meet in 4th and the men in 3rd, but that was giving up a full 33% of the competitions and no diving at all. If you take out that first day, the men scored the most points in the events they actually competed in, and the women would have finished 2nd. Finally, wrestling was in action today. I'll not spoil the lead and say they finished 4th at the New York State Intercollegiate Championships. And with that, I'll give it over to John, who knows wrestling better, and we'll talk more about the day.
All right, thanks, Matt. Yeah, real big day for UB wrestling. We had 4 finalists today. Max Soria, redshirt senior, he's been really on a tear this whole entire season so far. He won the championship at 125 pounds. Don't think they've released the most outstanding wrestler information yet, but I am a betting man, I'd wager that he did get most outstanding wrestler honors. He's 11-0 on the season. Last week he was ranked number 28 in the nation. I'm pretty sure he's going to be higher this week when they come out with the rankings. Also, redshirt freshman Jason Estevez made it to the finals, and he fell to Jamel Hudson of Hofstra, who was ranked in the top 20 in the nation. He dropped a 7-2 decision to him. Also, senior Wally Maziarz made it all the way to the championship match, and at 157, he fell to Russell Parsons of Army. And last, redshirt freshman Joe Areola, he also made it to the championship match at 197 pounds. And he fell to Jace Bennett of Cornell, who's also ranked in the top 15 in the nation. So some really tough competition out there today, but the guys really pulled through and for a fourth place finish. They were just behind Army. Tony Locke, he had made it to the semifinals in the 184-pound bracket, but he had to withdraw due to an injury. And he had made it to the finals in the same tournament last year, and I was pretty sure he was going to again this year. And if he had beaten the guy from Army who was originally scheduled to wrestle, then UB would have finished third. And the way this tournament is set up, there's an A bracket and a B bracket, with the A bracket being the main bracket and the B bracket being an open bracket where any wrestlers who are red shirts or people that teams are trying to rehab from injury and the like can wrestle. And we also had two champions there, with James Benjamin at 197 and Jake Gunning at 285, both going 4-0 on the day, picking up championships, with Benjamin really impressing. He won the title with a 13-second pinfall, which I'll have to go look at the record book, but I think that's a new record for fastest pinfall in UB history. And Gunning really had a solid day too, winning all of his matches by decision. In the A bracket, UB had all 9 wrestlers placed in the top 8, and in the B bracket they only do top 6. So the losers of the semifinal in the championship bracket, the losers of the semifinal matches go to the 3rd place match, and in the consolation brackets you have to win all the way out to get to the 5th place match. And we had Benjamin and Gunning with the championships. Austin Weigel also made it to the championship match, and he lost to William George from Cornell. And my notes here. And Rocco Russo also made it to the 5th place match. He lost his first match and then had 4 straight pinfalls. And Blake Rattel also made it to 5th place. And Brandon Lappy, the true freshman, also was 3rd. So really impressive stuff from wrestling. UB also led all teams with 28 pinfall victories on the day, which pins don't really come around that often in college wrestling. So I was really impressed to see that. And one of my personal favorite matches of the day was Brandon Lappy taking on Nick Tighe from Binghamton. And Brandon, he wrestled at a school that was about 10 minutes away from my hometown, and he was a 6-time Section 2 champion. And Nick Tighe was in Section 3, and both of them were state champions. And it was just a real grind out kind of match. It ended up being 1-1 at the end of regulation, and it went to sudden death overtime, and you couldn't really ask for a better match. Lappy ended up losing to Tighe. He was taken down. That was kind of sad to see that, but overall, really good day for UB wrestling. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, John, do you know in front of you how many wins there were total for them to have 28 pinfalls? Do you know how many we had overall?
Let's see. We had we had 28 wins just from pins, and then in addition to that, I didn't add them up, but
Okay.
there was a lot. I mean, everyone. I think Tony Locke, because he had to forfeit, and Alex Smythe went 0-2. Those were the only 2 guys that had losing records on the day.
Yeah.
Everyone else was 500 and above. And and Max Soria, as I said,
Hoffmeyer might have lost quickly. Um, uh,
Hoffmeyer was ended up 3-2 on the day.
oh, okay. Well, then never
So,
mind.
uh, but yeah, as I said, Max Story is 11-0 on the season, and Sean Peacock, another impressive freshman at 133. He went 4-2 on the day and finished seventh. He's 11-4 on the season, and he's tied with Max for the team lead in wins. Um, Jason Estevez is 6-2 on the season. Joe Ariola is 8-4 on the season. So, and all those guys are, with the exception of Max Story, are freshmen or redshirt freshmen. So the future's looking really good.
Yeah, you've talked about kind of this massive freshman class. You know, this recruiting group that's 18 or 19 deep, was a top 20 class in the country last year. And it's like, hooray, there's young talent on the team. And you don't really, at least I don't really think about it beyond that. And then we get in here and we've got guys finishing second, guys winning their brackets. You know, three guys in the final, would have been four, and you're rattling off all these names. And Joe Ariola now has gone up against a Big 12 champion or a Big 12 runner-up from last year. He went up against Cornell's guy. Intermat had him ranked top 14 today. Had him, was winning 2-1 with 2 minutes left, and the guy must have gotten a reversal or something over Bennett, I think his name was. And then you're like, oh yeah, he's a redshirt freshman. And I kind of have to do a double take myself and think, oh my goodness, it really is a young, talented team.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling's one of the sports where it's not like football where it takes a few years for guys to get acclimated to the college game. Like last year, Missouri had a true freshman, Jaden Cox, came in at 197, and he won the national championship. He completely dominated the sport. So guys can come in as freshmen, fresh out of high school, and they can really put on a show.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's the same, that makes sense conceptually. It's the same weight bracket or similar weight brackets. It's the same sport. If you're fast, you're fast. If you're strong, you're strong. It's not kind of if you get better in the college weight training program, you just move up a weight bracket.
Mm-hmm.
But cool. We'll probably end up talking more about wrestling later on in the show because, like I said, it's basically a swimming and wrestling day, not a lot. But I'm going to move on to swimming, the other highlight sport of the show. Like I said, swimming and diving missed the first day of their 3-day meet this weekend. I don't even know. I made a point with Dave earlier in the year saying swimming and diving is a place to win points. But the divers didn't even travel this weekend. They weren't even allowed to come. But I've gotten my notes labeled as day 1 and day 2. But really for the meet it was day 2 and day 3. Before UB even showed up, the Duquesne women and the Cleveland State men had jumped out to a large lead on their opponents. The men's meet had a field of 5, I think, 5 or 6. The women's meet had a field of 9. So pretty big meet. Akron was there. Akron, who is the reigning MAC champion in women's swimming and diving, that UB beat in a dual meet already earlier this year. Duquesne was there. Duquesne was very fast. On the men's side, some schools, Cleveland State looks to be really good. They've got a freshman who's solid. Xavier, I don't know a ton about the world of swimming and diving, know who's good or not. I know the fact that Duquesne beat the pants off everyone on the women's side is pretty impressive. But like I said at the top, UB had a number of wins, won about half of the events in what they were able to compete in this weekend, had a ton of second and third place finishes too. On what I'm calling the first day, on Saturday, yesterday, once they got there, UB won their first race. The women went out and won the 200 medley relay. They did that in a meet record, which is great. It's many of the meet records belong to UB last year when they had Brittany Curris and a number of these swimmers, and some of them they were able to lower this week, and some of them they didn't. But they went out, showed up having missed the whole first day, and won the 200 medley and women's 200 medley in the meet record. Later, right after that, Spencer Rodriguez. I don't know if she's a senior now. She might be a junior, but she's around. She finished second to Brittany Curris in a lot of races last year, and this year she's kind of the number one in many of them. She won the 400 individual medley, did that in the meet record, and also did an NCAA B cut time. And I was kind of looking while you were talking wrestling, John, and trying to find exactly what cut times are, and I wasn't able to find it quickly enough. I think that there's the A and the B cut time, and I think that the A cut time is a guaranteed entry into some level of NCAA championship, path to the championship, and the B cut time is you're eligible if enough people don't make the B, if enough people don't make the A. I will certainly look it up for next week and be sure, or look it up and fill it in the comments on this post. But Spencer Rodriguez hit it in the 400 IM. We're like a month in the season. She's going to drop that time over the course of the year for sure. The women on Saturday also won the 800 free relay. They are very, very good at the freestyle races. Megan Burns wins the short ones, 50 and 100 free. Somebody wins the 200, whether it's Megan Burns or Jessie Powers or Spencer Rodriguez. And then on the long distances, it's Powers and Hannah Miller, who's a freshman, and Spencer Rodriguez can also do the distance as well. And they win all of them. And the 800 relay is 200 meters for each swimmer, and that's the perfect mix where they can bring in some of their short-term speedsters and some of their long-term folks who just need to swim faster for shorter than they're used to. And I don't think they've lost that race this season. Maybe it's a Cornell. The men on the first day also had a number of wins. Matt Batara is a senior. He won the 200 free. He's very good. They also won the 800 free relay as well. And then Charles Berry won the 400 individual medley. So on Saturday, the men and the women swept the 800 free relay and the individual medley, 400 individual medleys. In that 400 IM for the men, UB not just had Charles Berry, but had 4 of the top 5 finishers. Something that you really see, I'll talk about everybody that won for swimming this weekend, but something that you really saw this weekend was UB's depth. There were multiple races where UB had 2 in the top 3, especially on Sunday. The men didn't quite look as strong at the beginning of the season, and I was wrong to think that. I think either that or somebody's coming back from injury. But the men are looking just as good as the women now in their last couple of meets. Both of them really destroyed McMaster in their last home meet, and I feel like there was a meet in between McMaster and today. But they both performed strongly against Cleveland State. We'll get more to the overall showing in a minute. Finally, on Saturday for the men, freshman Itai De La Vega won the 100 breast. UB's got the senior Scott Wong in the breaststroke, who really, on his own, would be a very strong swimmer in the MAC. And having this freshman Itai De La Vega step up, he, from his very first race, has made an impression in the pool. He won the 100 breast. He also set a meet record, and he also hit an NCAA qualifying time. And people don't seem to be as surprised that he won. People seem mildly surprised that he broke the meet record, but people do seem very surprised that he hit that B time. So that's exciting for the freshman. And just like with Spencer Rodriguez, that's going to come down because it's only the end of November right now. On the day on Saturday, if you take out the fact that UB men and women missed the first day and take the second day alone, the women finished second in overall points of what could be earned on Saturday, only to Duquesne, and the men got the most points of the day by a very long shot on the day. So they showed up and they proved that they belonged at the top of this meet. And on Sunday, they really continued it. Spencer Rodriguez came back and won something else. This meet had a running of the 1650, which is essentially a mile. It's a little bit off, but when you're in a 25-meter pool, you've got to find it in a 50-meter increment. But she set a meet record in the mile swim, which is awesome. And Megan Burns also won the 100 free. She missed the 50 free on Friday, but she won the 100 free. Between those two races, she's only lost once this year. She came in second in the 100 free against Cornell. UB Athletics says that she's undefeated in that race, but she lost against Cornell. Technically, I guess it wasn't a real meet because Cornell's not allowed to call it a real meet, but she swam against someone and that someone beat her. But she won the 100 free this weekend. UB also won the women's 400 free relay. Like I said, they dominate the freestyle. On the men's side, you saw this depth again. You saw it again in the breaststroke race. Scott Huang won the 200 breaststroke. De La Vega also finished in there, and I've forgotten the name of the fellow who came in second. I feel badly about that, but I've forgotten it. They also went 1-2 in the 50-meter backstroke. Matt Batara once again won, this time in the I've got it down as the 200 free, but it's something else. It might be the 200 back. And they won the 400 free relay as well. So the men got their fair share of wins as well today. Again, on Saturday alone, the men scored the most points, and the women scored the most points as well. So, not Saturday, Sunday alone, today, whatever today was, the men and women were the best teams in the pool today. The women by just half a point, the men by a larger margin. In the overall meet, the men finished third and the women fourth, which I'm pretty happy with that no matter what. You consider that both of them just missed 8 events and just gave up the points in them plus all the diving events. That's pretty nice. If you take out that first day, you've got oh my goodness, I just totally lost my train of thought. If you take out that day alone, the men would come in first and the women would come in second. If you take out Friday. But as it stood, they finished in third and fourth respectively. A really, really strong weekend. Coach Lauren Baisden at one point on Twitter before today said that on Saturday alone, UB put a number of people into UB's top 10 all-time record books. And it's a lighter month in December, so I'm going to take some time to familiarize myself with those record books and see what we're looking at for swimming this year when it comes to that. So that's swimming. Big weekend there for them. They don't compete again until December 18th. That's their only competition in that month. They're home. That's a Thursday night. They're home against Canisius. Hopefully I'll be able to be there, and hopefully we'll win that. We'll talk more about it when it comes. So those are our 2 spotlights. John, this is kind of where we open it up. We should make sure to hit volleyball at some point, but we don't have to do that right away. What would you like to hit? I just talked for a while, so.
I kind of want to know a little bit more about the swimming and diving. I mean, you mentioned earlier that we had beaten Akron and they were at the Cleveland State meet. How does swimming and diving look this season? I mean, compared to the rest of the MAC. I mean, are they going to be in competition for a MAC championship, or where do we sit?
Yeah, swimming, diving, and track and field are interesting because it's individual, and then you just kind of get this accumulation of points. And UB's always had a few people who contend for MAC championships, and I keep bringing up Brittany Curris, and there will be a day when I don't bring her up as much. But she was the three-time MAC most outstanding swimmer. I think she won 12 or 13 MAC championships in individual events over her time, and she's a big deal. I think that UB beating Akron in Akron on the women's side is a really big sign for what we can expect this season. I wanted to, and then I got sucked into wrestling today, look up kind of where they stand relative to other teams in the MAC and how they're swimming. But just in this meet against Akron, on Saturday, the UB women scored 368 points and Akron scored 343. And today, the UB women scored 437 points and Akron 394. And now, obviously, that's gonna sandwich down a bit in like a dual meet setting where there's fewer to go around, fewer points to go around, and there's not as many folks in between. But that's a pretty good margin. It's not like they were neck and neck with Akron. I think in either of those situations, you pull out just UB and Akron alone, and UB would have beaten them. I haven't looked at the other teams. I would like to believe that UB's doing great. If Coach Basin's right, which there's no reason she wouldn't be, that UB is hitting multiple the top 10 ledgers of multiple races in school history this weekend at the end of November. UB has won a swimming and diving championship for the men before in 2011. And they've gone out and beaten Akron this year. We know they've got swimmers on the women's side that have won multiple MAC championships. But next time we talk, I'll be able to address this much more in detail, I hope. But they certainly look as good as, to the extent that we have any knowledge here before you hit the prime of the season, they look competitive on a MAC level for sure. I think last year the women finished third or fourth in the MAC championship, and the men a little bit lower. I don't quote me on that at all. If we've got one person viewing live, if you're watching this live or you're watching later, I could be way off. But I think they've generally been in the upper half of the MAC lately, and this year they seem to be better now than they were last year. And there's a lot of time to improve just in the natural flow of the season. So.
Well, that's good. Hopefully, deliver Danny White his second MAC championship in as many seasons this year. Let's see what else is there. I guess we get hit on volleyball. They lost to Western Michigan, as you hit on earlier, in the opening round of the MAC tournament. Yeah, I mean, not really much else to say there. I guess we kind of recap.
Yeah, it wasn't really a match to remember. Unfortunately, Western Michigan is ranked fifth in the MAC coming in, and UB, I kind of built up this. Well, UB was missing Talia Bishop they missed her for three matches entirely in the MAC season, and parts of 3 or 4 and more. She was ineffective or missed most of due to continued illness or injury, whatever. She kind of had 2 different rounds of issues. And I was like, maybe they're a little better than the actual 8th team in the MAC when everybody's there. And Talia Bishop did not play, so that hurts. And really, other than Akila Lane and Cassie Shadow kind of up in the middle, it didn't look great at all. The first set was promising. It was real neck and neck. It was like 15-15, 16-16. UB had a 19-16 lead, and then Akron went on Western Michigan went on a 4-0 run, and then it was kind of Western Michigan's to lose, but it was never far away. It was 25-22. You got the feeling that UB would win a set and hopefully contend for a 5th set, and that's kind of when anything happens. You just get one momentum run in the 5th, and it just didn't happen. Western Michigan led throughout, maybe not led throughout, but one going away in the 2nd set, and the 3rd was even more lopsided. It was 22-12 at one point. UB had a real strong run. I shouldn't say strong. UB capitalized on Western Michigan errors to make it look close-ish at 25-19, but it was just each set was progressively less competitive. The real undoing for UB here was they hit poorly. Their offense was not as efficient as it normally has been. That's kind of to be expected without Bishop, and they have won sets this year while hitting poorly, especially when their blockers are doing well, as Lane and Shadow and Amber Hatchett did today, or that Friday. But UB gave up 10 aces. Western Michigan had 5 aces in the first set alone, and that's something that we've seen come on and off over this year. Kind of long-term people on UB Bull Run will know that a long-term thing on the football field is cover the kick, and on the basketball court is make sure you shoot your free throws. And here for UB this season, the more so than hitting, more so than blocking, although blocking is a pretty good telltale sign, is how's UB doing receiving? And when Nikki Bozanowski has a great day digging out attacks, UB does better, obviously. You get that under control earlier. But UB gave up 10 aces, 10 service reception errors, and that was kind of the story of the day, I think. Every time Western Michigan had a chance to put a nail in the coffin, they did with another ace. And by the end of the first set, it already was, I don't want to see another ace again. So that was frustrating. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Western Michigan pulled the slight upset the next day and beat Ball State. That was only a slight upset. Western Michigan was 5, Ball State was 4. But today the Broncos went out 5:30 this afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, and they beat Ohio. Ohio was undefeated in the MAC, had only lost 9 sets in the whole MAC season. Only one team, Miami, had taken them to 5 sets, and Ohio ran through Western Michigan in the first 2 sets. Absolutely, there were points where Western Michigan just ended up standing up straight, watching a ball hit the ground. It was kind of unfortunate to watch. And then Western Michigan won the 3rd set, 25-23, won the 4th set, 25-23, came back to force that 5th set. They were down 10-6 in the 5th set to Ohio. That's Ohio only needs to win 5 of the next 9 points. Excuse me, 5 of the next 12 points to take the match, and they didn't. Western Michigan fought back to 12-12, had match point at 14-13, gave it up, had match point at 15-14, and won it. So UB very well may have lost to the eventual MAC champions, and you can't beat Ohio any more closely than Western Michigan did, but that was the only way anyone in the conference was going to beat Ohio this year. So that's tomorrow at, I think, 7. It might be 5:30, but we'll say 7 for now. As Western Michigan versus the winner of Miami, Northern Illinois, which should be Miami. They were up in the 3rd set with a 2-0 lead when I kind of stopped paying attention. That's happening. UB could have lost to the eventual MAC champion team, which I hope takes some sting off that loss. But it was not a fun match to watch. Going back to the match that we should be talking about, the UB match.
Yeah, I mean it was disappointing to see. I was hoping that we would be able to pull the mild upset over Western Michigan, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you look back on Coach Sunahara's first season, I mean, there's definitely a lot of positives to pull. Even though the record was the same, they made it to the MAC tournament. And I mean, if Talia Bishop doesn't get injured, partway through the season, I think they win a few more games. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the majority of the roster is coming back
Hmm.
next season. So
Yeah,
that's something to look forward to
yeah.
next year.
There's some mixed opinions. I am not. Um, like soccer is I'm far and away the soccer guy on Bull Run, and among the editors I'm the Olympic guy. But we do have a commenter, Paige Miller, who has been following UB volleyball for a very long time and knows volleyball, and I've learned a lot from him this year. And he's less optimistic than I am. I do get a little bit Pollyanna-ish at times when it comes to the team, but they are returning. They lost two seniors this year, lose two seniors. They're not gone yet. But Liz Scott did not play at all this year, did not play for the entire second half of last year. Sable Stoller was a strong contributor, a frequent starter, but she was never the focal point of the office. She was rarely even the second most productive player. She was usually the number 3 or 4 person in terms of swings, if that, sometimes 5 or 6. And she's a good player. She's versatile. She could play all 6 positions this year. But everyone else is coming back. Next year will be a big make it or break it year, because we'll have a lot of seniors next year. I do think there's some question of, was this a better job than last year under Todd Kress, the old coach? And I think 6-10, same MAC record. They did have the advantage of having the better tiebreakers this year than they did last year. Like you said, Talia Bishop missed 2 matches outright and was kind of ineffective for the following 2 or 3 in the middle of the season. Missed a match outright at the end and was largely ineffective in the finale, which she did play a little bit, and then missed, obviously, the MAC tournament game. I think if she's at full strength for the full season, we get 1 more win, hopefully 2, but we did win 3 of those matches in that span. Of the 6 or 7 that she was out, we won 3 or maybe 4. So it wasn't... We were losing games when she was in as well. But if we had 1 more win, we would have been the 6 or 7 seed, and we would have been going against Eastern Michigan or Kent, who we went to 5 sets against Kent once, went to 4 sets against Kent once. I think Eastern Michigan took us to 5. So we were more competitive with them than we were with Western, and that would have pushed us through to Miami, who we did beat 3-0 to start the season. It might have been a different story. I think this was a better team than last year, and I think it was a better coaching job when you consider that Talia Bishop missed time. We did have Sable Stoller back, but last year we also had the MAC Defensive Player of the Year in Kelly Swoboda. I think next year, like you said, we have a lot of people coming back, and that's a big deal. Amber Hatchett will be a senior. Talia Bishop will be a senior. Akila Lane will be a senior. Megan Lipsky will be a senior. So those are four players who, when they're healthy, they start. They started this year, and they'll all be seniors. And Bozanowski is a freshman. She's our libero, our defensive player. Lynn is a sophomore, I believe. Prinsbach is a transfer, but I don't think she's a senior next year. I think she's a junior. Oyama is a freshman. Shadow's a freshman. Day's a freshman. We have, just like the women's soccer team, we have players who got a good amount of time this year who are coming back. But the rebuild starts in 2 years, and it's good that he's getting people time now, and then he'll be able to get people time next year. But 2 years is when really, I wouldn't say this year's junior class was a big recruiting class. I wasn't following at the time. I don't know if it did make waves with Todd Kress, but we have a lot of contributors that are juniors, rising seniors for volleyball.
And I'm sure in the next couple of years, Coach Nunehar is, just with his name alone, he's going to start pulling in a lot of big name recruits. Just trying to take a look quick at, you might know this better off the top of your head, of what the recruits look like that are coming in that will replace.
The one who I can think of right now, we know of both of them. They've announced it as a 2-person class, which replacing Stoller and Scott. And the one that I know about is Gabriela Maciejowski. I might be butchering that name. It depends on how anglicized you make your Polish heritage. But Maciejowski. She's from Ontario. I think we kind of touched on this last week in women's soccer, but I think across the board, UB's doing a better job of capitalizing on the fact that they're 90 minutes away from one of the largest cities in North America and the athletic talent that has to be there. And additionally, just the makeup of how Canadian athletics work, where it's really a club system over a high school and scholastic system, kind of promotes players who are going to have more higher stakes competition experience um, before they get to whatever we're talking about, college. I can't I can't find. I'm gonna have to go to our own article on that.
See, I think
Um,
the other was Jesse Holly from
no,
CMS.
Holly is only a junior this year. She's coming in the
Ah,
year after. There's
okay.
we had a verbal from Hannah Watson from Ohio, and her high school was very excited because she's the first ever volleyballer from her high school to get a D1 offer, but she did not end up signing, and Paige Miller was concerned that she no longer had an offer from UB, and UB ended up signing someone else. So I couldn't find what I was looking for right away, so I'm digging a bit in different areas. But let me find our post on it, because I know that we had both.
Uh, the one was from Williamsville South.
That's right. And she won a state
Yeah,
championship this year. I don't know her individual stats. We'll pull her up now. We'll keep an eye on the time. It is 11:08. We only need 5 minutes to close it.
all right. In the meantime, is there anything else about wrestling?
I'm interested. I was peppering you with questions at wrestling today, and if I don't know them, not to be egotistical, but if I don't know them, our general readers, and we don't have many viewers, but the general people who come to Bull Run probably don't know them either. So I've now forgotten the type of stuff that I was asking you about. There tournament points in wrestling. There's advancement points, there are activity points, and placement points. And placement points make sense. You get a different level of points for how far you make it. But if you could just explain, I know you've explained them to me individually already, but if you could talk about that for a second. And there are other things I have to ask about, but I'll have to remember them.
All right. So basically, placement points is if a wrestler places 1 through 8, gets on the podium, there's a different point value allotted um, for placing each of those different spots. Um, Advancement points is each time a wrestler moves up in a bracket, like advances on in the bracket. If it's in the championship bracket, then it's 1 team point. If it's in the consolation bracket, it's half a team point. And activity points it works pretty similar to the way they do in dual meets, where depending on how the wrestler wins the match by pinfall, decision, major decision, or technical fall, there's different point values assigned to each of those. And when you combine all of those together, that's how the team points are determined.
Cool, thanks. I'll remember more of them, but I've pulled up the name from Will South. Her name is Madison Clark. She's our second volleyball recruit coming in next year, and she is not only let's see if I can find like a max preps thing here. She is not only a state champion in volleyball from this last season in the fall, but last spring she won a state championship in softball with her high school too. I don't think that she'll play volley or softball for UB, but that happens. It's cool to see multi-sport athletes. The former football coach talked about wanting to recruit guys he was a wrestling coach as well, and recruit multi-sport athletes. And while we don't talk about football here, I think the idea of getting folks who are familiar with different settings of competition, have not devoted unilaterally to one sport is a good thing. It looks like what I can dig up quickly that she's a setter. She's a 6'1" setter, which is interesting. That means she'll likely be able to play up on the front. Right now, in the second half of the MAC season, Reed Sunahara used both his setters, Marissa Prinsbach and Megan Lynn. And Prinsbach is 5'9", we'll say. Lynn is 5'6" or 7". There's a noticeable difference. It might be 8 for Lynn, but there's a noticeable difference. One is a couple inches taller than the other. And Prinsbach can play the front row, but not great. So Sunahara was rotating them in and out so that the setter was always on the back row. And that meant that he had to run more substitutions in an individual set. if Madison Clark is a setter and she's 6'1", she will be able to play. That will make her one of the 5 tallest players on the team, and she will be able to stay on the front line when her turn comes up around there. So that's interesting. It looks like this YouTube video says plays for the NFVB 16-1 national team. That might just mean they compete at a national level. We'll find out. It looks like she attended Star Point for a bit before moving to Will South, which I didn't know that moves like that happen in softball and volleyball, but they do. Yeah, Western New York is a pretty competitive place when it comes to girls volleyball in high school. Got aces on almost a quarter of her serves, and that's high school competition. Serving at over a 90% clip, that's encouraging. I don't know quite just how well competition levels extend to college stats, but she was a state champion in volleyball, and New York is one of the stronger places for girls volleyball in high school level, especially on the East Coast when they play it in the fall versus, obviously California, Hawaii are going to be very good at it, but that's encouraging. Jessie Holly, as you brought up, she's a junior now. Sunahara got her commitment very early. She'll be joining us in 2016. But that's it for volleyball. Do you have anything else to say about wrestling? I think there's no harm in ending sooner.
Let's see. I did a little bit of digging, and the high school where Tommy Forte, the big recruit from this upcoming years. Yes.
I went and learned how to pronounce it after we had that last week.
Yeah, after I completely butchered it. Actually, assistant coach Bryce Hasseman was the head coach at that high school, so there's a connection there.
That's
between
good.
The two. And that high school has traditionally been one of the stronger programs in the nation. And I believe it was on D1Wrestle.com or one of the other sites that does the rankings for the recruits. They had him as he was a top 150 senior in the nation among all weight classes.
Wow.
I think he was he was in the top 10 or top 15 within his weight class. So it's going to be really exciting. I think next season, after Wally Maziarz graduates, I think he steps right in and competes for time there at 157. Yeah, that's about all I got. Is there anything else?
Yeah, just since I had one other thing, just on our social media, we had a lot of Twitter engagement today, and Hasseman is a name who came up across. He hit one of our wrestling things. So it's nice to see. We've gotten a lot of engagement on the swimming and wrestling teams today, but he's an assistant coach. The assistant coaches and the head coach of swimming interact with us on Twitter a good deal. It's nice to see. While we've been talking, Max Soria has found us somebody that's related to him. I won't go so far as to say which relation, lest I be wrong and insult someone's age, but somebody related to him has tweeted out your piece in the last 5 minutes. So that's nice. I've talked with John offline about this, anybody who's watching, but it took about a month of just covering the soccer teams and the volleyball team in the fall to get any traction and kind of for people to learn that we're out here. But we are covering all UB sports. I set out at the beginning of this year to make sure that even if we didn't get live coverage or everyday recaps of every competition, that we do cover and talk about every competition that UB has this year. And we're on track so far. Between now and January is a light period, so we're certainly going to keep it up until the new year. January and February are going to get exciting because the spring sports start early and the winter sports get more frequent. But we're going to manage it somehow. But I recognized the name Hasseman as soon as you said it because I saw him come across Twitter today. We've had a number of people from the wrestling team catch us on Twitter today. Swimming parents are reaching out. It's just good to see. Really fun to do today when both teams had a big weekend. Um, we normally do this weekend bowl at the end of things here. It's a light week, but I'll let John. I'll let you take it and take us right into the sign off if you want.
All right, that's kind of a good segue. With wrestling Saturday, um, well, first I should preface this by saying that all four fall sports are done as far as the Olympic sports go. Volleyball does take on U Albany, but I don't really want to say it's meaningless, but more or less it is.
I should interrupt there just to say it doesn't matter or anything, but if volleyball wins, they secure their first. It will be the first time they have winning seasons back to back since '95 and '96. It'll be the first time they've done it as a MAC team. It'll be only the second time they've done it as a Division I team. So I should have said that earlier. I totally forgot about it. It is meaningless to the MAC. I would hope that a lot of youngsters play. I would not mind if we lost if everyone got time and we saw stuff that can be built on for next year. But a win would mean a first in the MAC era and only the second time for back-to-back winning seasons as D1. I should have said that earlier. I apologize for cutting you off.
That's quite all right. So in addition to volleyball being in action against U Albany, wrestling is the only other team in action. They will actually be in my neck of the woods here in the Albany area. They'll be at Hudson Valley Community College at the Northeast Duels held by Journeyman Wrestling. And I've gone to that a few times before, and there's always really good wrestling there. The teams that are going to be there, in addition to UB, are going to be Cornell, Missouri, Oklahoma, NC State, Purdue, Rutgers, West Virginia, Wyoming, Old Dominion, Binghamton, NIU, Sacred Heart, LIU, and Kutztown University. And it is a dual meet tournament, and UB will face Rutgers, Sacred Heart, and Wyoming. And at that tournament last year, UB defeated Sacred Heart. That was one of their 3 dual wins last year. Hopefully, I think UB can come out 3-0 on the weekend, so it'll be really nice to see that. I'll hopefully be able to get there and cover it live.
That would be great. I guess that's it for us. It would be great to have live coverage. It's nice that we don't have to deal with Cornell again. I could go on this rant again, but I'm sick of facing Cornell this year in any sport. It's nice for now to dodge Missouri and Oklahoma and West Virginia, but we'll have to deal with them again if we want to be the team that we think we can be. We've got to deal with them.
Yeah, I mean, we also have Missouri is in the MAC for wrestling, so we're going to see them again in a dual meet, and not this year in the MAC tournament, but in subsequent years.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later because we won't restart anything now. But that's the end of this week's Olympic Spotlight. We do this weekly. We discuss all UB goings-ons. Excuse me. No football, no basketball. We cover men's and women's basketball. Every game in depth on the site as it is. If you're looking for a video type show for basketball, let us know. We kind of talk about it. Have never really put it together. If it would get a response, we'll find a way to do it. But this is every Sunday night at 10:30. We talk all the other sports, whatever's up. We are going to stay weekly through December. Swimming only competes once. Wrestling doesn't compete very much. We'll stay weekly and we'll find something to talk about for the sake of getting on and doing it regularly. We may go down to half an hour, but you can expect us every week on Sunday nights. I'm Matt Gritzmock from UB Bull Run. I'm joined tonight and will be for the foreseeable future by John McWhinney, who we should always mention is a current student. We don't have a lot of engagement from current students, so hooray for that. That's our show. It was a good weekend by wrestling and swimming. Volleyball is closing up a relatively strong season compared to where they are historically, even if this weekend was a disappointing loss. That's all for us. Have a great week at work. Have a great night tonight, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.